समय की करीब 100 समय की जो आयु है समय की ये स्थापना करीब 100 साल उसके हो गए। तो 100 वर्ष लगे हैं लोगों को नेशनल पार्टी बनाने में और नेशनल पार्टी विद आई वुड से which is a big political force पार्टी बनाने में नेशनल टेक्निकली 6-7 बनी हुई है जिनको नेशनल पार्टी का स्टेटस नेशनल पार्टी का स्टेटस होगा और सही मायनों में नेशनल पार्टी होगा दोनों दो बात है स्पेस है कि नहीं किया जा सकता है नहीं किया जा सकता है लेकिन no matter how good you are, no matter how charismatic you are, no matter how hardworking you are, it will take very long time. Minimum 15 से 20 साल 25 साल आपको लगेंगे
Sometimes it's a quite a smart concept.
organic. And so should we not have a united opposition or a significant opposition until that? As I said, so how does Indian politics shape up in the next 15, 20 years? Indian politics 12 साल 15 साल में रिवर्स कैसे नहीं चेंज हो रहा क्या खुला कि बदल रहे हैं नहीं हाँ इसको 65 से देख लो 67 से और पहली बार जब कांग्रेस को चुनौती मिली केरला में तमिलनाडु उड़ीसा में बिहार में तो पहली बार कांग्रेस को फिर 77 आते आते एक दूसरा दौर कैसे देखा इंदिरा जी का दौर देखा फिर 90 से कांग्रेस 400
Sometimes it's a quite a smart
फिर 40 पर आया जो बीजेपी 2 पर थी आज वो बढ़ते बढ़ते 240 50 पे 300 के बीच में पहुंच गए तो ये चेंज तो होता ही रहता है लेकिन ऑर्गेनिक किसी को पार्टी बना के नेशनल पॉलिटिकल फोर्स बन जाए सर ऑल आस्क और मैं उनमें से नहीं तो वैसे इंजीनियरिंग करता हूँ तो बस मैंने बनाया और तुम हो जाओ
Sure.
इतना सा
Right.
किया जा सकता है लेकिन it requires perseverance it requires determination it requires character it requires time
For aspirational political leaders, etc., that are watching, what is the cost of playing with power or playing for power or flirting with power? You work so closely with power.
what is the cost
What is the cost?
if you want to get into politics
Oh, yeah.
in fact if you are a serious politician पहली बात तो अपनी पर्सनल लाइफ खत्म there is nothing called work-life balance
Is that right?
you are a public property literally you are a simple public property not a public property it's a public property जब अगर आप जा रहे हो रास्ते में और आपको टॉयलेट जाना है रुके या किसी होटल में रुके भी आप बाथरूम में जा रहे हो वहां पे जा रहे हो आप they choose option if you really want to be in a face let's get out of here it's not
But that's no difference. Is that
so that cost when I'm saying this dog cost which everyone has to pay
mine is classified? On some level, everybody is then making ethical compromises or ethical compromise outing.
This is not short cost. It says it will vary from person to person. Surely vary from situation to situation. But what is universally everyone has to sacrifice is the family, not like that. Then you can't be a mass leader or a big public figure and still have a work-life balance. That's not possible. Right? You know, my promise. बाकी और सेक्रीफाइसेस क्या हो सकती है करनी पड़ेगी तो आपके अपने पर्सनल सिचुएशन पे डिपेंड करता है आप सराउंडिंग साथ एनीबडी
Is it fair to say that there is ethical concerns are part and parcel of politics की आपको ethical compromises आते ही आते
ethical compromise you as a journalist you have to you know I'm some other podcaster you ethics ये मिलता है तो हर क्षेत्र में it's not politics it's not physics आप डॉक्टर हैं आप सब स्टैंडर्ड तो आप सकते हैं आप कहीं पॉलिटिक्स पे ज्यादा मैं करूँगा डॉक्टर एथिक्स से कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर ले उससे बड़ा क्राइम अगर तो शिक्षक को पढ़ा रहा है उसमें एथिक्स के प्रति सेंसिटिविटी नहीं है तो जनरेशन ही खराब कर रहे अगर तो आदमी क्रूज बना रहा है उसने एथिक्स पे कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर दिया। वो ट्रेन चला रहा है, ट्रेन का ड्राइवर उसकी एथिक्स नहीं है, वो दारू पी के ट्रेन चला दे। जीवन के ऐसे दो चीजें हैं। एथिक्स will always be an important factor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Isn't
you.
that
Pleasure.
same here? नहीं यार, देखो यार तो किसी का नेचर है ना, उसका आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं। मैं अगर इस तरह हाल की अलग चीज है, लेकिन it's funny.
In sense, with but then you can't get it. So that
But like,
it's it's a something actually. It can be community, people down to
remember
It is my own set. It is my own set.
in the sense that because anybody who's having a middle class legacy, if before doing something, you are scared of seeing pregnant, you're scared of seeing being labeled as being over legitimate. So there are different missions. So yeah, one wanted economic stability and yeah, to a certain extent, but I'm not kind of how to be from the bottom. But yeah, as far as when we started, we knew that it's that everything to us. Nature completely. They could was already a big giant in market. There is no in we create a market. We create the info and we not even musicians. So what's our shop for anybody who wants to do system
It is
content
my own set.
started up. So it's like आपको अगर न्यूज चैनल स्टार्ट करना है, आपको अगर न्यूज
It is my own set.
न्यूज़पेपर और टैबलॉइड
Quite is my own set.
PHS takes में आता है रिपोर्ट
My
एंड
own set.
न्यूज़ complete
Own set.
and do it.
My own set.
It's ambitious in the sense when you don't have a market and you're trying to create a product and it needs the product.
right.
That is right.
Yeah, but that's very interesting. And were you in your 20s when you did this? Okay, yeah. And I'm curious because it's a similar. Either we're trying to create a market, I would say there is a market of ours. We're trying to see the market. And I would just bet on options. I can bet on I think this will be the case. Did you have certainty or were you just like chip on the shoulder 20-year-old was that okay?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would call that ambitious or I didn't have that kind of knowledge. I had a basic training in
Journalism.
communication. And when I joined, there wasn't even an ANR. There wasn't a news agency because
It is my
media was still stable. Television media
Right.
was still stable. You think that news would go out? Everybody says that will be beneficial. So
own set.
दूरदर्शन में कितने कामली न्यूज़ देते हैं ये देखो कितना शो हो जाता है न्यूज़ देता कौन
So quite is my own set.
it was written by government officers. It was of the government for the government by the government. The news was written by government officers, cleared by the government, read by pretty looking people who would speak. Whether it's for the radio, making the people look up.
You had a voice.
You know, the words and the chimney.
Yeah.
By BBC. So you spoke like this. You sent the news read by the mother. You actually told some this in life. Which engine do you want to put some of this? But this is exactly what you want us to do.
That's interesting.
Right. So the only way to do was it was to talk like this. I was listening to it. जब इसे भी निकली जैसे मैं अभी बात कर रही हूँ ठीक यहाँ से निकली
The gravity in your आवाज में which caused me fair.
wow everything ask the parents they'll tell you of this kind I mean this is not a comedy show I think it's do you know what is to me अभी भी होता होगा अभी nuts के ads आते हैं
ठीक है.
your generation will remember Shahrukh Khan in a bathtub
Sure, I was listening to you still not scared.
you remember pink and so my favorite used to be
Not flashy.
the
He's not.
I think
He's not flashy.
something group leadership पे होती थी
Yeah.
or whatever. She was the voiceover artist. There's something called voiceover artist. And so she used to do the voiceover for Lux, and I would like her. It was like, you know, it was like. Let's think of motion. Let's you never you know, that's like very basic. I want to this. So the first time I went to do the volunteer radio audition, I waxed it like that. I was like, then nothing. First take, I got okay because I was doing knuckle. I do more basically. That was the complete accent. Today you have an accent of say a Rakesh Kumar. You have an accent of कोई भी accent fake नहीं. Working in the
You don't need to shout to be.
English. अब ना अपनी accent में होता है ना तो अपने accent में होती है. Everybody speaks in the accent they are comfortable in. How much we have come forward in our country where accents are acceptable. I understand that people who come from small towns ginger food here.
You don't need to shout to be noticed. Sometimes it's a.
In ginger. You know, let's go to cafe coffee day. हम Starbucks में जाते हैं. I understand that, but also understand कि हाँ ये है ginger, पर आपको acceptability सीखने में एक और कुछ साल ही मिले. उसके बाद आप जैसे हिंदी बोलते हो, जैसे इंग्लिश बोलते हो, जैसे कि हिंदी इंग्लिश है वो चल जाएगा हर शहर में. You know, so I think that the availability of choice, and I have kept myself relevant in this business where it is so easy to be irrelevant for women journalists. Women journalists don't last that long in television. It's over after a while. Have you seen? Is it a pretty much?
Sometimes it's the quietest man who owns it.
In some extent, yes. If you see television anchors, साड़ी वाली anchors कितनी दिखती हैं आपको? He was in jacket wearing anchors till recent.
Sure.
Very few. And how many you see beyond 40? It's only now a few people will see. Otherwise, it was over. So, you know, there was, I think, NDTV had a Milan party. In and it was over after that. And but yeah,
Never mind.
they used to, and in television, it's a very poor medium because it's also visual.
Yes.
So you need to look in a particular man on people, speak in a particular man.
Right.
And even when you go out to interview, you'll find because I had it said yes last year to me, thinking, आप जनता लोग को podcast करने में आप क्यों कर रही है?
Very interesting.
Anytime it's my podcast, I would do as long as watch.
Yeah, love this thing. Come on. We made it. When you're watching it, it's very interesting. It reminded me of this thing in the study. It started when JFK and Nixon was right. And this was right around the time where radio and television were fuel system. And so we had Nixon and JFK. And whoever heard that debate on radio thought Nixon. And whoever saw the debate on television thought JFK. Because JFK was a taller, broader, better looking, and Nixon was not as pretty and manly. And Nixon was a broader, deeper voice. And so the media dictated who people to call. And it's such an interesting fact. You mentioned that females don't last long in this profession, at least as anchors. We've seen this with the actresses, much more common. That their life is like until 30 and then their younger sister has to romance the same guy who's their uncle's age. I just keep shaking until is that sexism as part of why females get discouraged from doing this? Yeah.
It's 1894.
Yeah.
It's there everywhere. I mean, there's an ad, right? In which the guy says that I want to invest. I don't know what it is, some investment wala ad hai, where he says that. So, in which he says that, you know, where should I invest? And the mother says that is where invest karo. And he doesn't hear. When he doesn't hear, and then suddenly the voiceover changes, and the same thing is said in a male voice.
He's not flashy, but his parents.
Did you say? So then the mother said that let us start working.
मैंने बोला था बट आवाज जब मेन आवाज आती है और इन्वेस्टमेंट पैटर्न्स you listen to me. And this I have said that whenever I go to the first place when they invite me and I find youngsters listening, which is a very big thing because after a couple of minutes everybody's story either because that's so boring or it's
It's the optionality. It's the optionality.
optional.
The downside of the optionality you were mentioning earlier is that I have to prove to nothing.
Yeah.
Including a figure. I can just tune out and scroll.
Yeah.
And so nothing's sacred in it.
You have to flip attention every 30 seconds.
30 seconds is a lot.
No, I speak to a live audience.
Oh, I know what you're saying. Because when I was serious to it, one of the most interesting things is associate just teach the students with lots of concepts. Right? Because the guy was serious. And Shadi only Sham and when you're teaching the chosen kids, I have woken up at 5 a.m. coming 6 a.m. class, they have to go to office right after class, they have a long day ahead, and class going to afterwards also. It's very dealing sort of situation. Most people are barely showered, it's so early in the morning. And now this guy stage, it will be the most boring subject ever. But you have to hold your attention. And they invent these techniques to hold your attention. So some people have tools that they've mastered and they will repeat it every like 45 minutes or like 30 minutes. Some people have also keep or gimmick and they all came up with this method. This is back when the iPhone was not such a proliferated technology. Now I would think you last 30 seconds before shouting. So there's somebody on my podcast when I started the conversation that we and it's such an interesting fact that to scream at them to get action. The optionality is announced.
Yeah.
Just before you say no.
The same thing that when I go to campuses and I'm talking to them, when you sit in front of the television set and something is happening to the weekend, don't just tell your mom to pick up the dishes and take it to the sink. Ask her opinion also. She matters to you. She doesn't matter. Political guys have realized that. They are the ones who are coming out with all the programs for women voters. You think the mother doesn't know? Your mother is the one who
Deciding.
has decided who your chief minister is going to be.
Yeah. That's super good because I think all these guys are coming from much more on the edge than ideology of political party.
Yeah, it's acting and screaming and yelling. The woman quietly has decided when she's going to. पहले होता था that this didn't matter. They matter. So I keep telling young journalists also, when I speak to young journalists at home, I mean, at campuses, and I tell them, they don't think that your dad is the barometer. Your mom has a vote.
Yeah.
Your mom is quiet. You are not listening to her. It is she who has decided in the past couple of elections which way to take it.
Right.
And I've said this before in, I don't know, in news show or in a talk, that I was coming to look the elections, I won't say which one because I don't want people to figure out what it is. But we actually open up to say that this person is going to be right? And because this person hasn't campaigned enough or nobody knows about this person in that area. I was mistaken because I didn't realize that even the men are voting because of the shauchalays which have been made. Okay. So many bathrooms have been made, but it's not made in that area. And I didn't realize the impact of those bathrooms because young men were upset because they had seen their parents die because of the tsunami.
Yes, right.
Right? Their mothers got cancer and the father had to sell land. Now, it's not as a big family में एक था. एक family में कहीं that नहीं. दूसरी family में कहीं mother got cancer. The father had to sell a small plot of land to pay for the mother for the treatment. Why? Because you let the old person die after 70, 80. So it will get a बीमारी है, stuff related with that. But when it came to your mother, you didn't want that. You told your dad, sell that plot of land, small plot of land, your dad reached you gave
He's not flashy.
pays the pretty market treatment. So you got that treatment done, but you knew what impact that had. Not only did the woman vote for that Shauchal, and then the worst thing was, which I had no clue, was that when women used to go to the forest to ease themselves, it was only at 4 a.m.
Because it's not.
It's dark. And the men, especially lower caste women, so the upper caste people would not come and pick you up. And if you were to go past that village, it was their hub to do what they wanted to do. So there were cases of all these things that happened because there was conflict. For those women of that village, and I'm just talking one village where I went, where they told me and it opened my eyes because I went, "Ah, उसकी मैंने कहाँ गलती की?" Very few journalists do that or have the ability or the finances to go back and check as to why did I go wrong.
Right.
Maybe to go back and say, why did I see these signs? And I saw the signs and I said, so did it was so wrong with me. Keep letting me notice my care. That's what you see now. I didn't notice the signs when I went because I posted that everything was absolutely fine. This was 6 months back, 7 months back. I went to Srinagar, I didn't see the sandbags, I didn't see cops anywhere, and I said,
He's not
I actually saw a band with Moody's poster and BJP flags going, and I said, Srinagar with BJP. Guess what's it?
He's not flashy.
Said, "Badal gaya hai badal." That's okay. So,
He's not flashy.
बदल गया है but यदि आप देख के चलिए it's these are surface level plan surface. I was so thrilled to see the change.
Yeah.
Having seen the 90s, I was thrilled to see the change.
Right.
Then I interviewed a former separatist on the podcast, spoke to him, and he said after the conversation, ये सब तो ठीक है, but be careful. जो conversations उनके
He's not
problems में begin,
Not-
still joining or whatever they call it, like
समझ गया मैं चौराया हो गया उनका नहीं
he's not flashy.
still anger, there is all these things that happen in the country, in the rest of the country, उसका असर पड़ रहा है, and there is still progress. Militancy doesn't end it. Please don't think that everything is absolutely okay, 370 okay. There are still elements. We want that return of the temperature, return of that. I didn't care that answer that
So this is like Joey.
So I told him, I said, look, I think we return this. Because he's not a former military, he's a former
He's not
So somebody who subscribed to the ideology but did not take part.
His father was a Huria leader. He also was a Huria. We were the US faction, which has been considered a moderate faction. फिर मुझे मिला सर आपको वापस आना पड़ेगा क्योंकि जो आपने कहा कि जो मैंने कहा ना super confidence level that I was talking in when I played back the dramatic music back at this played back which I sound such a pompous appearance claiming कि सब कुछ normal है नहीं है भाई ये हो गया कहाँ पे normal किस बात पे छापे की गई था
But I don't blame you. What came from this? I was very confused with it. He was also part of it. He's the security intelligence community license that's a protect. For about and you know throughout the conversation with him, we have any at least it's not the fast one, you know. So it is that we had to look conversation answer our national security works, intelligence works and whatever. The next step is happening, it's a calling out on like uniquely. Because everything we've said will fall flat in its face in light of what has happened. In some sense, I don't think anybody's. I don't think Kashmir is somehow weirdly close to at least my heart and the Indian heart. Like, there's something very passionate about the relationship.
He's not
Kashmir.
flashy, but
Probably it's that grew up around enough to
owns it. He's not flashy, but is
tremble in fear on their genitals. I actually did see some of that growing up. Without having any context, at 12 years of age, I'm sitting with my best friend at dinner table and they're telling me what their family's seeing. That's shock. And so Kashmir gets us very riled up. And I think we allowed ourselves a brief moment of moments. We never we didn't see it coming. But we were hopeful. And then it was taken from us. And now I don't know what to make of it. I mean, for the first week of after this happened, I was angry. And I wanted I was what? Right? Like I'm a young passionate guy, so like, we will show them. But the conversations I've had since have really made me think about it deeper. And I understand that this is not a kill the militants issue. Because ideology reproduces itself. More people, more anger, I think we have to have a multi-pronged strategic approach, of which kinetic action is to be part of it. Pakistan needs to be shown that they cannot do this, but I think this has to end once and for all in a call. I don't know how it works. I don't think it's going to end once and for all. No,
Unfortunately, um, I want to have the optimism of you, which you have. You say that once and for all. But I have probably uh, this is what makes me really sad that I have the
He's not flashy.
vision of experience. I wish I did. I wish I didn't have to look for it. Had that way thing up all the time.
right.
But I've read the 90s. I've read the Kushmi. I've seen it all. I'm very it's not here. Actions now to predict people all the time. But it's how how do they mushkil? Military action will never end limits. Will never end discipline. If we don't learn that from the experience of others, then we will make the same mistake again and again. I want your generation to make that mistake, which my generation.
This is
I
the
don't want
gentleman said
them
it.
to make the same mistakes which America made. Did it end for them? War on terror?
No.
It did end. My dad was posted in Gaza in 1962. Gaza still not going there. He was posted as part of a peacekeeping mission.
This is the gentleman said it.
No.
So I don't believe that military action is going to do it. Of course, we have to take a military action in some way or the other. But now I'm treading on difficult terrain because I don't want our youth to hold back or pull back from that anger. Anger is necessary to take certain actions. But when it comes to wars and things, street cannot dictate.
Yeah.
Street ought not to dictate.
Agreed.
Right?
Right.
Personal reasons ought not to dictate what's after 9/11, America was being went into a war that was not necessary. And found an opponent just कहीं तो मारना है तो चलो मार. Right? They didn't find it that way. They didn't find. We went after him.
Yeah.
In when they had absolute intelligence. So around the intelligence area where that money from.
This is the gentleman said it.
The Intel guys have washed so many other things. So many business. You must have been a child, or you must have been in school. Middle school or whatever. Blasts used to happen all through the country.
Yeah, then you see me, I remember the problem was with the gunner, I had the music.
So these are traumas. These are not just memories.
For me, I was 6. So for me, yeah.
It's a trauma. It's there somewhere in here. And when this incident happens, that comes to the forefront. So your anger is not just because an incident has happened. You are made to relive
Don't need to shout to be noticed. Sometimes it's a
because our parents never thought to deal with children. Or never thought that ये इसका कोई traumatic effect हो रहा है हमारी mind, right? Right?
quietest man who owns it. He's not flashy, but his presence.
It is a very bizarre thing to see camera हमारा video camera में lens cap
ठीक so that it doesn't fall, right? So now,
it's tied by a kind of a thread. So the bullet dissociated on that lens cap and lodged itself on the sign of my candle. And at that time, the ambulance was only for the MPs because of that रहते थे MPs. किसको पता नहीं लगा कि ये गिरा क्योंकि bullet means. So he was picked up physically and that lodged itself deeper into the sky. So his survival did survive a year. He was paralyzed completely, but they could not operate and take that out because it was lodged in his spine.
he would get it out. He's not.
So we, as in us, first lived with that trauma for a whole year. all of us who live like you are, we currently are now this time then reporting which all very feared. But we all lived through that. My cameraman in Srinagar was killed by a passer-by. There's a Mushtaq Nagar named after him. It's 23. What did he name it? Was it a
Yeah,
legend?
yeah, nothing serious. Nothing serious, nothing consequential. Anything.
According to the first time. At 23, a bastard bomb came in in Kashmir. So, and he was just a couple of years old. Seven. Just a couple of years ago. That's all. Really not problem. And yes, it's not wrong to be looked at. There are many Kashmiri Hindus, Indians today, when I say, because thousands uh, escaped from there. उनके बच्चे हैं. One of our reporters in Washington DC interviewed a woman whose parents had fled, right? And she said, I gave it to my parents, I believe, when Pehlgam happened. कहाँ Washington DC, कहाँ Pehlgam? True, right? So what I'm saying is that it's not as if government of India, after we record this, maybe it happens tomorrow, day after, we don't know when, right? So this is also that's directing action happens. Even if that happens, it's not over.
It's just been undisciplined. Yeah.
It's going to continue because Pakistan cannot let Kashmir be a normal Indian state. It goes against their grain. As they say, it's their moving up, it's their jugular vein. They will do anything and everything. And I think just last night there was, they said that all the dams they have listed on the rivers and said it's time for us to take these back to Pradesh. They can't take it back unless they are planning to annex Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir. They can't take those dams back. If they blow up the dams, the water will come to them and
Flooding.
flood them. So it's a rubbish thing,
Correct.
but it's all.
Yeah. What?
So, I don't know where we're going to go. It's just that whatever decisions are taken, it shouldn't be done in a hot-headed manner. So people in the media should also be, I think, exercising some degree of caution where they can. To watch that they don't apply undue pressure on on the government. And I'm not saying just media, also.
Yeah.
It could be school principals, teachers, parents. Talk to your. If you think as a principal your job's only about grades, no. Have the class teachers speak to the students. Teach them this because when they go home, they're watching that trauma. They may not be speaking to their parents about it. And in most homes, parents will talk about these kind of things.
So very different things to talk about.
But there is no cry karo. Baatu ki ka karo. Smile karo na to mazak karo. This is the kind of conversation that most parents have with their children.
Right.
So it's the job of everybody, not necessarily leaders, but in some form, responsible citizens to
Oh,
young minds.
I got passion. I very, very. I made sure I took the Mickey out of China. Made sure I made
किधर है अजय
right like I was. But the conversations I had were very different.
आइसक्रीम किधर है
Very sensitive. And I said, I make the point that I'm
कहाँ जा रहे हैं कहाँ जा रहे हैं हम
right? Give me sense, give me experience. That's what we want to have 25 years of watching Let's Play over and over after repeated tries. Like I do appreciate it honestly in saying I wish I did not have that end where I could sort of see the world in a different way. On some level, I wish I did have some insight because I am bound to make those same mistakes if I do. Right? Like 30 years is a long time to gather experience of doing those sentences. And I definitely think these are very formative events in the psyche of future workers, where in some sense,
He's not flashy, but
some of my colleagues command airspace, media space the size of giants. There are millions of people listening and paying
not flashy.
and what they say has a direct consequence, if not 10 years later. A lot of the audience that I have, or a lot of the audiences people have, are 25, 26, 22.
This is the gentleman said it.
10 years down the line, they will be the consuming.
This is the gentleman said it.
They will be the deciding, the producers. And a friend of mine used to tell me the story about Ayatollah Khomeini. I don't know if that's true. And I don't know if I remember it. But he said that Khomeini would send out lists with his lectures on that. And one day Shah Raza sends some people to take Khomeini out. The Khomeini, those guys walking there like, Khomeini's like, my order food, he's like, my order king, he's like, my order skin, he's like, where are people?
This is the gentleman said it. 12 pieces,
And he says, wait, 10.
zero compromise.
And he was actually informing that sort of roots that eventually led to him returning into the country after he had fled. So I don't know the story, but it's a
Gentleman said it.
it's a
12 pieces, zero compromise.
Creators know that it's a shelf life of what we say is a million years after that. We might be consumed once, we really don't wait for now. If you remember,
Egyptian Giza cotton.
right? No matter how young, I remember coming from school or something and like watching the telecast and well, and you have that. It's a common thing where people like ask each other, do you remember that what time? Right? Because like those are moments of that high emotion is what creates that thing. My sister
Egyptian Giza cotton.
office when the CPN blocks happened.
And finished zari embroidery.
Calling her, being like, okay, and she's like, it happened right outside my office. Like, fine, but it happened right outside my office. I don't know if that memory is accurate. I don't know if I remember that. If you remember saying, and so that you're very right. These things are, yeah, they come.
Every time it could be hundreds of miles away that incident.
And finished zari embroidery.
You know?
For-
Uh,
Formal wear, but with an
get the
edge.
traumas and we live in an area where there's a lot of conflict. We were studying in Melbourne.
Right.
There was a innocence to it.
Right.
The first time that I remember something, yeah, police security ने कुछ नहीं इनको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता they were so the wars they fought were outside. It's not as if it's a peaceful society.
Right.
It's a pretty violent society, but they fought their wars outside their land.
Right.
And land changed all that. It happened in their land. They are vulnerable. That's we were vulnerable. Suddenly they realized that. Suddenly those barriers came up. But even now, when you went to
Formal wear, but with
let's say
an edge.
to study. My I remember my children were not
Formal wear, but with an
terrorism as much as as they were. Like they knew it with
12 pieces.
so they knew that bombs were like that's what their memory is. That whenever a blast of ammunition is going, so when I would come back from a zone where a riot is happening, so okay, she's back. I'm guessing that that's the level that they experienced it. But then it's just an anecdote. I don't have my son's permission to say this, but I'm still sharing it with you. That when he was studying in DC, they had a cricket team. They had no money for that cricket team, so they had to raise sponsors. And one of the sponsor was a restaurant, a little hole in the wall restaurant. The way it plays Patanabe, you could get Indian food. So the Indian, Pakistani, Sri Lankan,
12 pieces, zero compromise.
so that guy sponsored the kit for them for 2 or 3
12 pieces, zero compromise.
वहाँ पे baseball है, football है, those days.
Yes, yeah, right.
So he used to sponsor it. Then 26/11, the Mumbai attacks, right? And my son told me that they were sitting, all the students were sitting and eating, and they were watching it on TV. And suddenly the
12 pieces, zero compromise. Egyptian Giza cotton, hand finished zari embroidery, formal wear.
came for a couple of minutes. That's all. It was just a couple of minutes. And suddenly the rift came between the Indians and Pakistanis in that moment. It wasn't a cricket match. It wasn't usually a cricket match where Indians and Pakistanis.
Yeah.
That moment was enough to separate them, and we just looked and said, "Hey, what? We're taking your money for sponsorship?"
Right.
They gave back the kids. They said, "We don't want your sponsorship anymore." And the Australians and the Brits and the Americans and the West Indians in the team all said, "We don't want you. We won't have you as a sponsor." He said, "The deal, they is well, nah, we don't want humans." Just that he cheered. It just came automatically. There are Pakistanis also in the team. The
Formal wear,
Pakistanis
but with an edge.
are fine with that we won't take this guy's money. It was that
Formal wear, but with an edge.
very mature people who say, like Sushant Singh, defense activists.
Formal wear, but with an edge. It's
Pakistani friends. But, थोड़ा सा करेगा ना, तो
night doesn't start until
they still
he walks in. The
this is how it's funny. And there, if you're a nationalist Indian,
It gets very hard.
it gets hard.
Yeah.
If you're the Indian who said he disputed my generation, there were Indians disputed है हो जाएगा settle हो जाएगा. See, I know of medical practitioners who are on various WhatsApp groups and things like that. वहाँ पे दरारें
night doesn't start until he walks in. The
family groups, family.
gentleman's edit. Your next obsession is here.
What do you do when your students, when you have Indians and Pakistanis out there in a conflict situation? It's extremely good. Let me give you a random example. You could be a gynecologist, or you could be a whatever. I mean, oncologist, right? The other person out there is a pathologist. You've been sending your patients there for check. वहाँ पे वो पैथोलॉजिस्ट जो है वो पाकिस्तानी है, तो इंडियन हो, और वहाँ पे वो stuff, that Pakistani might be putting some rabbit stuff, or your Indian friends, Hindi friends are putting some rabbit stuff. उसमें किच-पिच कितना मच रहा है, everything going for each other. You can't exit the group because those are your contacts.
Right.
When you meet them, but you would hesitate, right? Because do you trust that Pakistani pathologist all that much? Most people say, yeah. When it comes to medical profession, we don't know that. No.
Like, I cannot believe it. Like,
It does somewhere.
and I mean, I get it. If I was a student and I was being taught by a Pakistani professor who walked into class and I saw this, it's really fun, right?
after or even before, there will be art classes where the Zionist regime is so and so was written on the whiteboard, big as hell, biggest day. I would be, I would not be okay. If I was sitting in a class where a Pakistani professor was to come in and lecture me on how the Indian state was this draconian, uh, hungry sort of giant who wants to occupy all of this, I would, I would either drop the class and have fun. I don't know any other way, and maybe it's my passionate male North Indian genes that will end up there, but it's a like when I think of my parents, I think of my friends, I think of all those people. The the connection I have with this land is so many memories of which it's not a professor's prerogative to tell me. It's never need to, never. And all these thoughts coming to me. I'm not saying that accurate. I'm not saying they're mature thoughts. I'm saying you deal with this situation, and I saw a lot of this happen to the Israelis and the Palestinians or the Arabs, largely, all Arabs. They were fighting non-stop every day. And their
The
mission
night doesn't start until he walks in. The gentleman's edit. Your next obsession is here. You don't need to shout to be known.
foreign media like the issue like they did with Israel, where it's no longer the issue. It's a PR propaganda battle, and then there is an on-ground battle. And those are to be fought very separately. And so lives have to be taken from here and put there, by whichever part. Whether the Palestinians stock up civilians around their terrorist sites, or whether the Jews actually kill Palestinian babies. It all happened because the American media machine hijacked the issue away from us. I did not. I've seen the consequences of it. What happened on my campus after 7th October? People on the campus, students, people on the campus, the buildings stopped themselves inside, said, now provide us them while we are pretending to play this demonstration, while we are protesting as a theatrical act. Yes. And if I was a student, मेरे बाप ऐसा पढ़ाई करने के लिए दूसरा और मेरा पंजाबी पूरा दूसरा मामला मुझे राइट अब नॉर्थ इंडियन में इसलिए भाई मेरे पापा ने पैसा दिया पढ़ाई करने के लिए घूमते हैं भाई घर वालों को दादाजी उसने क्या पढ़ के आया कम आपको रास्ते में बता and this is the American way. You were saying the Americans are so innocent, you look at Western culture or Pacific coast because what terrorism has reached there, twin forest fires. They never think about it. कुछ नहीं पता उनको ये नहीं पता मिड अमेरिका में क्या चल रहा है ईस्ट कोस्ट में क्या चल रहा है for them to all this is happening yes they did that it's like बड़े खुश और बड़े संतुष्ट हो गए हाँ the sun shines pretty brightly in that part of the world but then I also meet with idiots now like that I meet with young idiots उनको पता नहीं है कौन है you know randomly I might ask people and say that what there's a generation of American style bachas that being yeah. Which was so content in their guide channels. Yeah. They're so Instagram oriented that they know everything about the new soaps on OTT. They know everything about Insta and they know all about music. They are not politically active, savvy. Maximum is like, maximum work. That's all. No, I'll frame this better for you. There is an entire generation raised in meats. And so,
He's not flashy, but
and the guys with meats are much
he's not flashy.
for that. It's this, I was sitting with this very
But it's
Indian businessman I'm not named, and he said something. He said that the old guard does not realize the means of consuming content have changed, and therefore the means of consuming products have changed. Where people go for watering themselves is very different from what it used to. There are no secular brands possible. There is no television as a medium. So you cannot create a brand that cuts through, that looks that cuts through the aspirations of the tier 2, tier 3 India, and then the relativity of tier 1 India. Yeah. You have to create niche brands around niche content consumption goals. And so Prakhar is a real, and alongside Prakhar is a Vinamra, Ranveer, and Smita, and they're all podcasting creators. For them, you can create a something that that work for people who watch podcasts. But the people who watch podcasts may not be watching news or vlogs or something of that nature. And if you look at how people talk, I don't know if you have Instagrams like this. It's just it's being said to each other. Like my friends, they never say how would we. They will send me a funny one to say I thought of it. And then nobody ever watches. We also know they're not watching it. But this is my way of saying I thought of it. Yeah, I know. Right? I know. And so it happens to me and I have to find back. Will send me something like this. And even then she did it. And I would just call up and say, WhatsApp is not mother-daughter relationship. Will you please call me or can I call you and can we just converse? My mother will pick out all the phone because she lives in Ahmedabad. She's a judge. So 5 days.
But his parents
So
failed.
probably I will I will tell you what this thing actually is. Like the it's the yeah. No,
I heard this. Who is it? I think
Flashy, but
Pankaj, right?
his parents
Pankaj Tripathi. So पंकज त्रिपाठी का एक मैंने देखा था शॉर्ट था या इंटरव्यू पॉडकास्ट where I saw this in which he said which he repeated when I had him on the podcast because I said please say this because it was he said that his daughter I think at the dinner table said that this whatever why don't you do it and he said देखो जितना तुम Instagram पे रील देखना चाहते हो देख हम 1 2 घंटा साइड में 2 घंटे के बाद रील पे रील देखो then you shut it. I just think in that 2 hours, if you learn anything, has it put your mind to anything? Has it enriched you with anything? 2 hours of your life you give it.
Yeah.
Right? You make a sick person. Basically, right? So then I said, yeah, he is probably younger than me or my generation, but what can he's given? But it's just a simple thing.
But whatever not for anything. Except like I could get a handful of Amir Khan movies between 2005 to 10 that was sort of impactful in no कुछ sexy होता है that
Yeah, this is so much. Yeah,
like
please. Family, yeah,
right so what
but his parents
everything over evil.
but his
who means yeah मेरा point है I think India loves facility.
Yes, I understand that.
parents
And just it's a stress buster, so I can understand, people doing it because they want
his
to
parents
their stress. I don't have any objection to that. But now what I've realized is that when
Parents.
at least whenever I download a podcast, I download something. So I'm not looking into something to get a camel neck.
Yeah.
So I don't want that. So I'm not looking into my phone. I'm listening to something and walking. And
his
I saw
parents
that happening in so many towns and cities in Europe and in the US. People go
Flashy,
for walks and
but his
don't
parents
listen to music anymore. Music is techno.
Yep.
And
It's
then
all right.
I don't want.
I love that but I still agree with your point.
No, that doesn't. I cannot take 90 years. I'm sorry. I'm like,
No, I can't even like them either, but I love technology so far.
okay, I'm the.
I think you should already yeah because it's the same movie, right? And suddenly after like 20 minutes, I have clarity of thoughts because of the background music. Okay. So it's a weird thing. I'm pretty sure it's a generational. You know, very right. I honestly was actually thinking about that talk. And so I was listening to it, and I was like, this is way better than anything else I've been doing.
Yeah.
You can't walk anywhere. There's no walkable cities, right?
Because
his parents
and there are in Bombay, I have so many people telling me that they listen to the podcast to check and the locals. It's 1 hour from one station to the other station. तो लगा दिया. At least it's taken away your mind has gone away from the smells and sounds.
How far off? Yeah, I'm telling you, like India consumes. Right? This was my hypothesis when I started doing kind of stuff. And this is like post before the election, I was like, I want to talk to people and understand their money. After the election, I was faced with revenue. And I wrote a
Parents.
that people come here, rich, poor, busy, unbusy, with their all family after a tiring day. They really laugh. They will be mad. And in that laughter and reacts to whatever content, if they learn like for instance, this conversation is such a alive conversation. We laughed a couple of times for emotion. And then they learned about trauma and terrorists causing trauma. They will take that much, much better than if I'm like, okay, now Sudha, tell me how does media operate? Because that they brought out, they had enough. Their boss was told, it's a Google search. So I think Indians in general, all the cinema I watched in the 2000s and maybe 2010s was all fantastic. It was only when the gangs of Wasseypur did its realistic thing, and there are Pankaj Tripathi, Manoj Bajpayee, that era started coming about when people like show some real stuff. We're frustrated by that. We've seen enough this needless search of romance, but there is no romance. It's a military story. Stop romance. Yeah. Yeah. नहीं देखना ये angle में लड़की हो रही है that's really school.
That's an Indian thing.
Yeah.
हम लोग जब if you go to restaurants, I mean, you might go just with your pals or whatever.
Right.
Most of us in restaurants with parents. with our family, cousins, or whatever. It's Indian Chinese restaurant.
वो मंचूरियन भी आना है, दाल मखनी भी आना है,
Parents,
पिज्जा भी आना है, पास्ता भी आना है.
So you went to a country, you had to try एक गाना तो आएगा.
I just
his parents failed.
understand how common is Ozempic in your circles? No? No.
I won't
Parents failed.
hesitate because a lot of our work is delayed.
Right.
But and when you are in your 40s or 50s, you're battling other issues. अगर ये भी चला जाएगा ना, तो कुछ नहीं बचेगा, इसकी बचेगा.
फिर चले गए थे.
So, I certainly won't.
Flashy, but his parents failed.
Till I was 35, it was battling to put on weight. And after I was 35, I was battling to lose weight. So जो समोसे खाए हैं ना
Alright.
in your early years, wait and watch each 40 buddy.
Wow. This is what I do this podcast. It's like all of the parents waiting.
अब देखते 10 साल के बाद वो tips में जाके बैठ जाता है.
I honestly think 10 years from now, medtech is going to be massively small. Like, I don't think people will have so many issues and eye issues.
My relatives, my chachas and all that, like everybody had diabetes, right? And people are told that diabetes is irreversible. एक बार तुम आ गए diabetes में तो like you have to take insulin and you have to but now it's reversible, right? It's fabulous that you can actually control diabetes. You can reverse the process. So many other ailments. Of course, we've had other stuff. But in one of the shows, they called me 13 Lucas one channel called me, they never called me after that. What 15th August meant. And for me, I said the first thing that I want to say is that I survived a pandemic. For Independence Day, I'm here on your channel.
Right.
That's the biggest thing for me.
Right, true.
That we are talking to each other, we survived the pandemic, and we can look forward to creating a nation that we dreamt of. We survived, we got मेरे लिए सिर्फ वो है, उसके बाद चैनल में
Actually, if you know about trauma, that was trauma. I think of in large scale,
This is not for attention.
still
And this is not
but for some kids, it was the first time they watched their parents scared. I have memories of my father. He got cigarette. I would sit outside his room every night because he was alone inside, and I would be done screaming. Stuff my project with him. I would sit outside his room, and I would hear him have his fever come and go all of his dead mother. Like, maybe it was funny. And there's nothing quite like. I mean, it was fine. My uncle had it worse, and he's fine now too. I remember getting blood plasma from the military bank because the plasma treatment of the other side, and so on. And that was, he had a huge tank for oxygen in case somebody needed. And there's always somebody to go next to me where somebody would write to fill up oxygen so that if somebody needed it, my we had to rest. We had, I think, you now first. So this is the time, right? He's got 60. So we went to let's go. Let's go. There's no beds. We check it again. It's and that night I called. I think, can we get something somewhere? And we finally got him quick. This uncle I've never met credits me for saying this. I'm an idiot. Well, I had to do another idiot answer. But it was very fun. Proper I was very fun. Me forget.
So I will not forget. So, I spoken about this earlier, and I want to use your platform to talk about this. It's I'm going to come to the point of how to relate it. And link it to COVID. How I'm going to do it is that what happened in that time was, do you remember there was a journalist called Rohit? He died due to COVID. And he was Aaj Tak. He was very popular, but he was hated a lot by a certain section also because of the editorializing that he did. Now, at that time, what happened was a kill list was brought out by a certain section. He said, 10 anchors for Varna Chennai. Right? And in that, there were 10 names, and in that, my number was 9. My name was 9. And that's the one, right? The day after that list, no. What happened? that this was yeah. So no, the list came out after I got admitted for COVID. And I was like, okay, I got admitted and मेरा भी SP level का हो रहा था and everything was good now. And I was a bit nervous because the doctors were there and that. And suddenly what happened was that number one died, number two died, number three died in that list. There were journalists, there were others, they said. And Rohit passed away. Something about him passing away affected me very much. It could be the medications that I was in or whatever like that, but I felt कि अब हम 3 तक पहुंच गए तो 9 में पहुंचने में सारा it was just a troll who had put up a list. Okay, I keep thinking I'm very strong, trolling doesn't impact me, but something impacted me there. I just gave up fighting, and a lot of fighting COVID was in the mind. You have to fight yourself. I just gave up. I was like, see, at that time there was remdesivir drug.
This
Now
is not
the remdesivir in the movie.
man who this is
उसका black market की वजह से people would steal it and all that. So you had to be aware that it is being given to you. There was stuff which stuff was falling right everywhere.
man who this is
You had to be aware
man
which are that
who this is
like क्या so it was coming. You had to figure out that no sugar is going up or what is happening. So this lady came up and said, "Oh, BP burger. मेरा BP तो मुझे low था. BP burger is something not right. फिर इसकी body कम हो गया. It kept going down. And then my son called me up and I said, I just do not fight this. If it's over, it's over. And then I told him the basics. कि क्या कहाँ पे रखा हुआ है, क्या चीज़ है. It's stupid, right? But you talk like that. Maybe the drugs were having an effect on me. I don't know, but I was giving up. And it's like, and then he was like, what do you want? And then it was the doctor said, "Look, we have to bring you to ICU.
man who this
So if this situation continues the way it's continuing, then I'm sorry, but we have to go to ICU. At ICU, क्या था? There was no support staff. People were dying, 13
I
days.
yeah, going beyond the thing. Yeah, right.
This was in that second.
man who this is not man
First April or something like that, but now
who this is not for it
exactly wrong.
man
I just at that time one I just scrolled on Twitter somebody put this thing कि अगर इस तरह के exercise करोगे it helps in you know making your nerves stronger. Not recommending it or anything like that, but I tried it. Slightly improved work. They kept breathing and for breathing exercises and where किसी तरह असीम
man who this
again. Because as soon as they could see that, they would have treated me. So I just looked at the doctor exactly I told him. He was just like, okay, everybody has
man who this
six stories I'm sure. But for me, I just survived that time and I turned the tide back. So as far as I'm concerned, I could live through that period and I would be forever grateful. So
man who this
but when these guys go on asking me on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever they're whoever's doing it, see people think that it doesn't impact 18 lives. It hurts. You are a little more responsible. When you are sending out these tweets, oh you dumb German. You're just so stupid. Every tweet that we put out is not necessarily
is not for it
journalism. It could just be
A person
man who this is not
on the
for attention
performance.
is not regarding my journalism.
Yeah.
Everything that my organization does is not open to your students.
Or it's not political stance.
Yeah.
Right? Like life is fun.
And you understand that our audience is varied. What we put out is something that the South channel might want, the Northeast channel might want. You sitting in the part might not think it is newsworthy,
Yeah.
but somebody sitting in Gorakhpur, somebody sitting in Tiruvananthapuram, what's that?
man who this is
We want it, so that is also something that we have to cater to. Why is this news? This is so stupid. Why are you doing this? So when we put out all those Pakistani women and men who were going back and forth, the amount of hate that I got, why are you giving publicity to these people? Like, पता था क्या इतने पाकिस्तानी तुम्हारे मुल्क में छुपे हुए हैं? लॉन्ग टर्म वीजा में बैठे हुए हैं, कागज नहीं दिखा रहे हैं, इतना आसान है ना कि कागज नहीं दिखाएंगे. I adore the musician who wrote those lines in the sense that I think he's phenomenal. कागज नहीं दिखाएंगे. कौन सी कंट्री है जिसके पास they don't have a registry of citizens? हमारा ही कंट्री है जो stupid. Please आ जाओ जी, आ जाओ यहाँ पे बैठ जाओ and you don't need to prove your citizenship. यहाँ पे बैठ के holding a Pakistani passport, you manage to get all the documents to even live in this country.
Which is a joke. Which is such a like you, that should be basic civil structure situation.
भाई तुमने उनसे बोले तुम ऑनलाइन शादी कर लो, तुमने ऑनलाइन शादी कैसे करी?
Or if this is not catfishing and some kind of espionage, so उसके making से नहीं है. Espionage looks like.
So why you think
This-
publicity? I know the people who are trolling me to say why you think publicity. I will give more publicity. चाहे सरकार मेरे पीछे पड़ जाए, चाहे कॉमन पीपल मेरे पीछे पड़ जाए, मैं ये सारे बाइट्स डालूंगी ताकि आप सबको पता लगे that
This is not
got married
not for it.
living amongst you, but they have still not given up their citizenship. 16 years, 17 years, some of them 30, 35 years. So living in your country have given up citizenship. You don't feel correct enough that she didn't give up her citizenship for 15 years or whatever after marriage. She
This is-
finally gave up her citizenship. She became an Indian. She was voting. But she did for some 10, 15 years after her marriage. These people,
Sure.
30, 35 years की वो आ गई. मेरी खाला है पाकिस्तानी, मेरी भी है पाकिस्तानी, तो वो फिर यहाँ पे क्यों रह रहे हैं? या तो तुम वापस चल जाओ. मैं 6 साल की शादी है, 2 बच्चे वहां हैं, 2 बच्चे यहाँ हैं. क्यों? मैं 2 छोटे बोलने को ले आई, बड़ों को वहां छोड़ दी, यहाँ पे आई, वहां पे ही रह जाओ. Understand how these people are getting married, तो उनकी बेटी का रिश्ता है. नहीं भाई, वो दुश्मन बोल के, एटलीस्ट वो तो हमको दुश्मन बोल समझते हैं. तो तुमने अपनी बेटियों को वहां क्यों भेजा? जब वो
This is not
तुम्हारे दुश्मन कह के कहता है, even if you're a Muslim, you're दुश्मन मुल्क,
Right. Sure.
right?
Right.
तुम बेटियों को क्यों वहां भेजते हो?
Dushman was men. Ah, right.
चाहे तुम as an Indian उनको दुश्मन मुल्क ना समझो, उनको पड़ोसी समझो. But the point is, वो तुमको तो दुश्मन मानता है. वो सिर्फ मुसलमान ही देखता, वो तो तुमको हिंदुस्तानी मुसलमान समझता है. हिंदुस्तान पहले दुश्मन मुल्क है.
man who dis-
तुम्हारी कौम एक नहीं है.
man who dis-
बेटियों को क्यों भेज रहे हो?
Think through that. Sorry, it's
not- not-
a little bit of diversion, but you that I want to think about
For-
what we survive
For it.
because it's the same trolling situation at scale. What do you think it's an organic situation where people actually
This is not for attention.
With Ranveer, I've met him a couple of times. Even in his corporate season. First time was I've never seen the shows, frankly. I only saw that it's that clip when it got aired and became big. I just feel that I think Ranveer got manipulated by people who wanted him to say something. Because it wasn't original what he said. He's young. Who doesn't make mistakes? Galat bolta
This is not for attention.
now when he's nature about like that, he's a very he's like a sponge. He just absorbs everything and he says, उसमें इतना filter नहीं है. And why should I expect the filter from a young kid in his 20s? I didn't get that when I was in my 20s. Nobody would give me that leeway. Kari to it was over in our career. We were not given that.
second chance.
No, it wasn't. It was over because there were so many outlets that you made this kind of mistakes, your career was over. You will be that before because that followed you wherever you went. Wherever you applied for a job, it followed. So there was that kind of shame and that kind of mistake, there were the second chances in journalism. This is not journalism in the sense that we say that journalists made.
No, we maintained it.
Yeah, but I just feel that the amount of hassle that he went through probably shouldn't have happened. See, I would say with Kunal Chopra also that the tolerance level is so limited in our. Okay, he said it, right? he went overboard. Certain things you don't say. India is still not mature enough. In America, you could stand. I think Salman had said this, and you could stand and say whatever you want about the United President, and that's what happened. हमारा कल्चर वो अभी तक पहुंचा नहीं पहुंच जाएगा कभी ना कभी पहुंचेगा they are probably we are heading to that where you don't like it don't watch it my line is that making it into a police case FIR my personal view is we take it too far
My sense was that it also doesn't seem like enough people. See, I tell you, who was it? People who are kids with it. There's a very strict line I think I can draw between 38 and 40.
so we वो उल्लू नहीं आया क्या
Right.
उसमें क्या है
वो तो क्या है?
explicit है
I tell you what, anybody who thinks for themselves, मतलब my ability as a 29-year-old, I'm not married, I don't have kids, is what is good and bad for me. So suppose weights are being sold in the market, and if I were to make a model art, what are you putting inside your skin or diamond things? Right? I'm looking for myself. Even I have nieces, nephews, and kids, and I'm thinking for the younger generation, I think very different. Now I want cigarettes to be done.
right from where your studio goes. There is a place, I don't know the name of the car, it's called and there's a picture of a Caucasian woman big on on the podium. There's no skull shell made just a cigarette पे बनता है. But how is that how?
Right? And so my point is that these 40 plus reviews were not native to media to digital sense. Might have been offended. Like if I talk my neighbor, she'd be like, how's it going? But nobody was like, yes, no, and I felt like that part. Very, very different. This is my sense of being inside the show. First thing was like on that show, on other people's show.
And this is not for attention, but intention.
Millions of pieces of content will not be made. That seemed like an ambition. That seemed like an ambition. And the consequence of that, the way his situation with his family got lost, or you know, by the same virtue recently, as an aftermath to that, Samay speaks the least of the problem. I'm sure he's going through more problems right now. I think effectively a whole generation was living it. People don't understand how young kids think of Samay Raina and Ranveer Alam Bhavi and Apu. I think they're superstars of this certain and they may not even mature into it just right
So
now.
that's there. See, and I don't need it to be reality. It's not my
It's not your taste. It's not your taste, you know.
yeah. So I don't go into that, but it went to some of the some of Ajay Devgn videos. No, it's not. It's fine. You could take no, it's okay. I mean action movies. I'm not a fan. No, I'm not action movies. I would never be. So that is it. That doesn't mean I will believe that. I say that if I think of something, I just like I just think उसने जो कहा it sounded gross. Our films are shown marshals.
Yeah.
Okay, then these are classic films which are shown.
Right? Right? I'm sure. I've never seen enough movies for I'm sure.
You can see in Bingo. It's do you see that as because it is her father-in-law, so not a black guy.
Sure.
But it was done, let's say, in a creative manner because they don't actually show
They're not
But intention.
they're more suggestive.
But intention.
suggested, but
But
teenager, but
intention.
such a deep impact in my mind. It was like this is gross.
But
To a certain extent, it also taught me parents in my generation
But intention.
never taught us about being have also everybody got close to your cousins, cousins,
Sexual safety.
yeah, we didn't teach that, right? For
But intention.
that it's possible for a relative to, it's possible for a relative to have global thoughts about you, right? It, I understood it with that in mind. It shocked me if, as I violated just watching it, I understood it. It was a truth. Because parents in my generation, they were so bad.
Right. The conversation.
No conversation.
Now I can say but yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Instinctively, you knew as a teenager, he achieved it. You didn't know what it was, but you just felt he thought
Just too much.
Yeah,
Right.
he's hugging frontal hug, which is not nice. I don't like it. So you can verbalize it because you were scared of saying
The consequence.
the consequence of it.
Mhm.
So you didn't verbalize it, but you knew you keep thinking. But for me, that felt, I understood what incest meant because of that. There was no Google, as I said, when I was growing up. There were no books available. Schools didn't teach uh, about all these things. Parents didn't talk about these taboo subjects. That is how I learned that there is something like this as a problem. And not to trust every lecture who comes close to you. And everybody is not,
Right. I don't know if I'm saying the exact thing, but it's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, in that under 15 bracket, if
ये heavy meaning like thin line.
I can take a 21-year-old, I think like,
don't need to shout to be noticed. Sometimes it's the quietest man who owns it. He's not flashy, but his parents felt. A man who dresses not for attention, but intentions.
right? They put a lot of work and all of that.
This is the
It became a very predatory exercise around the 90s. We believe this tension in that. One of the most sensible people's opinion on this issue was Kushal. I've always respected him for his intellectual vigor and his extroversion. And he was on the show, winning your show. And your show, you had a pretty open discussion with Abhijit and Kushal. So that's awesome. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up. And anybody under 15 who's thinking like it does not, it can really passes that common like, yeah, that's the minimum. Nobody ever said that. Yeah, nobody ever was encouraged in engagement. And I mean, in the case of the movie you're making, this is something that's completely wrong. I'm talking about the flip. Like nobody's looking at the movie and saying this is right. Nobody. Like, I remember I started your video by saying, look, I think he made a mistake. I think he said something. Everybody who had comment on the movie has been in that statement by saying, I think what he said is right. But in fact, nobody really believes that this is influencing anyone due to this time.
and saying something loose doesn't cut you out. We're shooting this in Haryana. अगर मेरा बात सारा भी trace कर देगा किसी को, first thing that comes up is माँ बहन की गालियाँ. तो माँ बहन की गाली है क्या?
Right.
Right? Your parents are using that. Your brothers and sisters are using that if you are not using that.
Right.
Right? Your parents are using that gully. If you're in North Indian,
this is the gentleman's edit.
if you're in the South, it's being used in a South Indian language. It's a fuller word. Yeah. So it's not as if, and the thing is that you expect he is sophisticatedly educated TV के सामने भी. अरे क्या? I'm telling you that other thing I found more gross.
This is
That show.
जो खंडू वाला शो हुआ है
Now, do you normalize that? Do you normalize saying pick off your clothes, pick off your undies? It's coming on television. Right?
This
The
is-
point is that if it's on the internet, so the interview
This is-
that up की चीज है.
No, I'm okay to have the conversation where we go. But is that good? Yeah.
I'm still I don't like bands. I'm not in favor of bands. But I still feel that certain content take off the content person. Right? Then if I am the person, there are enough backlog of cases which you need to handle. Right? But we don't penalize the person to such an extent is the not their perspective. Take गलती की, मान that, take the content off, make that guy, make him do two contents in favor of talking something else, which you
And you do it automatically. There's some correction that happens. Yeah. I also think let young people make mistakes because mistakes from young people is what causes innovation 10 years down the line. If you discourage us making mistakes to that, I'll give you another thing. I think India likes to compare itself to America like all the nations. That's kind of like
This is the
case that we were actually being very competent from because of movies. We were producing more content, better content. Someday show which was a rip-off, conceptual rip-off of Kid which is a huge show that in manifest like money, it was a very fast game. Want more money and more eyeballs than if people will panic every episode. And I'm not saying content is the I think science and technology is. But if the symbolic message from the older generation to the younger generation is every make mistake will be make a It is sort of you.
And how
How do I expect it?
no, it's so I think both inherent insecurity
This is
traditional media they go after
And
and it's good or ये have to do मेरे show में
this is the gen-
one person said for the the of the forces right कि डॉक्टर ने बोला क्या किया no what random thing what you very stupid
this is the gentle
watch picked up डॉक्टर ने watch
this is the gentle
कुछ कहा इंसान का ये वो they said all kinds of things we will cancel you and all that okay cancel you कुछ lectures नहीं बोला he's a unique art as far as defense is concerned 10,000
this is the gentleman
वो आगे भी वो लेक्चर देने के लिए वो 10,000 रुपए अलग चमकने के
said it.
he doesn't need it she's giving you plan how to run conversations around and how to build a narrative he knows you think that you're canceling people and then so then once I go for my organizations and वहाँ पे
This is the gentleman said it.
he said that you people are not welcome anymore. I said, who told you I'm not welcome? The army chief called me for the army day parade. Were you there? So the army chief doesn't hold it against me. The Air Force chief doesn't. The naval chief doesn't. The CBS doesn't. They understand that this is a country where we have free media. कल कहने से दिक्कत है लोग क्या ये टर्म इस्तेमाल नहीं करते मीडिया के लिए तुमने बहुत बड़े बारे में तो हम ही बोलेंगे since when have you become such demigods that we cannot criticize some of the things that you do? You learn from our criticism, and even if you don't learn from our criticism,
Because yeah, who is the privilege of ignoring me?
Yeah.
I'm not on the face. And I mean, I'm trying to hide myself as deeply away from you as I can. It's unfortunate that we are all on the same platform. It's unfortunate we're not the same way, and I don't want to do this one thing from you.
so
Let's
I
understand.
came the show and he said, look, I have this rule that I will not criticize the forces ever because they are on the frontiers and they are
12
give us a way. So talks no
12 pieces
medical professionals.
zero
If somebody makes a mistake, is it not your job as a okay, Anand is not
12 pieces
a journalist, but it's a commentator, right?
Is-
You are there every night on television channels. So is it not your job to tell the cops when they do something wrong? Is it not your job to tell the media they are wrong? Is it not your job? अगर तुम सोचे कि हम
zero
कि हमारे बारे में कोई कुछ नहीं कहता, हम डॉक्टर हैं, हम मेडिकल फिर तुमसे भी गलतियां प्राइम मिनिस्टर तक को हम बोल सकते हैं इस कंट्री में हम जजेस को बोल सकते हैं जुडिशरी को बोल सकते हैं लॉयर्स को बोल सकते हैं सबको बोल सकते हैं
12 pieces zero
करने लग जाते हैं
Yeah, the trouble is,
12 pieces zero compromise.
see, journalists are taking the hit every day. उनको बात सब करें मैं उनके पर मैं जजेस को बोलता हूँ कि यार इन्होंने गलत किया प्राइवेट राइट मैं शायद कभी भी ना बोली मिनिस्टर्स को भी बोल देते हैं कभी कभी कॉन्वर्सेशन ये सब पब्लिक by saying who you are a public persona and I'm a public persona, we have to expose it, we represent you. Yeah. And criticism is the name of the game, we have to make it. If we are okay with it, then on Gandhi we can do it. In fact, we is responsible. I'm not saying I will basically a Gandhi, but if we are okay with it, I don't know what you got.
12 pieces zero compromise.
And I don't know about because I do understand how things are. The sacrifice of life as the primary meaning is a sacrifice.
Egyptian
I give them that respect. But you cannot trade because no, I don't feel like everybody's that treasure level something.
they rectified a mistake that they had done so they understood they rectified the mistake they
Egyptian
that we pointed out a mistake that is made they just had a problem with the word I was better than a news
I mean, yeah, I think this is more the backfoot here. This is kind of like just never goes to backfoot. You say you were drawing that line. Even if it was, can you treat it as an honest mistake? Can you treat it as a super fan?
yeah he uses profanity so
Yes, sir.
how do people not tell me that he can be friends with somebody they answer this in
No, I had my friendship with him.
so why can't you tell him not to do it But that is his character. He it's in absolute freedom of speech and takes it to the extent that he uses profanity if he wants to. So
I probably hear both of them. Like when you read it, they're kind of like, yeah. I think he understands that that's what the internet lasts, and if you're going to find the law, fight it out. Like if it's information, then it's information. And the first time I was acquainted of him, acquainted by him, it was the same situation. I saw him on Twitter and I just, and yeah, then I met him. And let's go. And then sometimes I picture him and I check up on him and everything is okay. So, that's true. It's not. It's the dumpster. Yeah. And we all participate in the leadership dumpster fire. These kind of challenges. How will I not make this? Anand has that very embarrassing moment on television. Age to move to television. These things they are like you must stop. And I think because
he likes it. He likes it. Yeah, he says, what is it that he said? I will have
he convinced me I'm not in.
his thing was that these debates he likes them because he says आपका दरिया गाना है sometimes that term that he uses he says कभी मजा आता है so I can't take that so I find them on or their panel and now of course you can post exposing you can do which one you don't need to do this but I cannot take people's yelling at me. It just upsets me because I can't take it. So I can't. I keep asking him like, so was it up there?
You know, the frustrating part of this sort of conflict is the man. So over get back to you, rather than we just with the it's been forced against so that's probably the other side. How much time it's from? What minute take? You know, in the maths, but like we are she's to take the way that
It's all right. But it's not.
okay.
Just to deviate from it was like, the government is not what we were play or do some game or something like that. The music's going that, and she was like that relaxed. She sees ribbons from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. and she relaxes. And I said, watch it. Like the wiki doesn't it feels like going to get work done.
Egyptian Giza
I want to know what happened in the case. So I said, okay, reading the newspaper, you got what? So I think I had this that's they explain to me what is happening. And I like this gladiatorial fight which takes place every month. So everybody has
I'll say something and that will piss people off. This gladiatorial fight is symbolically the same as what a carrying man is. India enjoys pressure because India doesn't get to push. It has to hold itself back in the public messages all the time and pretend that we left each other. In private, you have to do it. And that void part is and it's very Indian that you have this if you look at Rihanna, you don't need videos. The sing song fashion in which they insult people out its routine is very much part of the system. But language is a form of and if you take that out from all public service, then it becomes
no, that's a culture thing.
it's
Environment anyways. It's different. It's different. It's up. See the reason so like
so yeah, just give me
South. So I live, I mean, in the sense that I'm a South Indian who lives at home, right? So I'm seeing both. And नहीं होता our culture में नहीं होता है like it's like यहाँ पे you can actually sit with your relatives and you can talk news about other relatives.
right. It's out.
So sure. I mean, I'm not so South as a complete South.
Sure.
But in many South Indian cultures, in some parts of South India, or even in it's
Sure.
it's like if that person is हमारे चाचा हैं वो तुम कभी नहीं बोलोगे चाहे जितना
Which we okay.
I mean, the South Indian version which is chikamao, whatever is the word, you will not.
Egyptian
So you could be whatever, but you will not end with things.
Giza
Right. I guess
Egyptian
Even as a
Giza
so what happens? There is that the bottom one, right? So when you see that the roasting has been got
it's the voice to be
Egyptian Giza cotton.
no. So if you can't go to your relatives and your cousins and whatever,
all the neighbors or whatever. It doesn't boss. Yeah.
you know, just Sharma ji ka beta, which was like,
And see, Sharma ji ka beta has become a king now. You know, Sharma ji ka beta was first the epitome of ambition. And then all that frustration.
Egyptian Giza cotton.
Agarwal ji ka beta, Chair ji ka beta hai. So I think it's a like telling you about your cousin.
Hand finished zari embroidery.
That's okay. Which guy की मतलब बोलता है अपने those cousins were such pains, right?
वो मेरे नहीं जब मैं इंस्टा पे मैं लगा पाऊँ ताकि तेरा पुत्र ये नशा आप सबको
Now, but they don't have them because now you know हम लोग नहीं. We grew up with all these people कि हम सत्यानाश होगा तो मतलब आप क्यों
तू 7 बजे उठता है वो तो 6:30 बजे होता हुआ है
something their family. So everything was an engineer or a doctor, and when I was an art student, you know, very quickly you will never make it in life because everybody is इतने professional होते भी नहीं है content creative
you're supposed to have 22 problem हाँ
so या तो तुम डॉक्टर बन गए ये दोनों भी नहीं कर रहे इसके सिर्फ ले ले इससे कम
तो ऐसा कर बर्बाद की मेरे सिर्फ उनकी इज्जत मेरे को दादाजी को आपको understand on different thing because he kind of still got from it. I come from a family of children. सब छोटे को नाम ये स्थिति करने मैंने बोला दादाजी क्या because one can say but for that thing and he he's accepted what I get that. I also get like one of the rules in my house when I was in United was you cannot use names of your child or parent. Don't call them names. Chacha, Bhai. So I know that question, right? Like there's someone existed around me. But I think it is that depression, this sort of
yeah
collectivist depression, allows us to isolate really then take a rip off each other and each other.
but lot of it is gender related. You know, a lot of the clothing that comes in for women actors, for women journalists, for women models, for women who are out there in our
Okay, yeah.
it's also for men who come from repressed families and societies.
Yeah.
Those who have never interacted with women of that age.
Right.
उनके लिए वो living, sitting and telling you the news, giving you the news, giving an opinion. मेरे साथ ऐसा होता है, I don't know about you, but जब podcast में आधे comments मेरे जो section में आते हैं, तो चुप करना, उनको बोलने दे, तेरी बात को हम सुनना चाहते हैं.
नहीं तो मेरे पास भी similarly because I am also not to view a podcast inserts मैं बात करूँगा
Hand finished zari embroidery.
मेरे साथ कुछ लिखना है वो आपका not what's without any other podcast ना तो वो ना that my feeling is that certain people of टीचर बोलेगी उन सब लोगों को मॉनिटर एक्टिव वो
Hand finished zari embroidery.
इंग्लिश में ऐसे बच्चों को जो बात ही और गाली ही हिंदी में देते हैं वो धूप में हाथ पीछे खड़ा करके खड़ेंगे अगर उन्होंने थोड़ा सा भी हिंदी में लगा के that is that happening on a podcasting level कि प्रिंसिपल आकर बोलने सुनो
You got experts, why you giving a gap? Excuse me, but मैंने भी थोड़ा बहुत सीखा है.
और मैं तो कुछ नहीं सीखा है मैं तो ना टेंशन ask questions I don't know
I'm saying that I'm enjoying this conversation with you because you've been giving a perspective about certain things which I get it. I didn't have that perspective, but I'm learning so much from you. Every conversation I have,
Hand
that's the
finished zari.
you as a human, right? I keep telling this to to people in my family that keep your mind open to ideas. जैसे I tell that to my husband too, that keep your mind open कि यार मैं ऐसे नहीं मैं 6 बजे के बाद खाना नहीं खाऊंगा कभी कभी खा लो. Why when you become a creature of habit my view is that some people think that habit is good for health. My thing is that when you
Hand
become a creature of habit you start aging.
two things
finished zari.
I think the what if you ever tell yourself you're not able to start again and I'll tell you why play video games with your 10-year-old nephew niece son or daughter and you realize that by the time you're 60 you will still be normal playing still because you will be doing the cooperation the world will change massively when I played video games with my 14-year-old cousin this is the most I realized was we have when the first time we was like and bought the used manual and then people like really grabbed with me कहानी सुनते जो मेरे पास भी नहीं and if I ever tell myself skills that's it one problem I'm on time right number one number what this habit wala thing is, I call it the difference between living from memory and living from experience. When you start living from memory, your life, my life from day to 50 is the same every day. No, I see the building, I see them get yellow day by day. But because it is an experience I've already had, I've seen this before. And that ride, which is an hour-long experience full of vibrancy and butterflies and horns and cars, is a new thing. My day has passed by way faster for me than it did at 21. Because at 21, I was experiencing things for the first time. And so when you stop experiencing things, when you live by memory, time becomes shorter, you have it. You change faster.
And finished Sarim.
And you get this experience if you even a long 15 hours them from Delhi to here.
And finished Sari embroidery.
Immigration line पे खड़ा हूँ भाई गेट पे मत बैठाओ प्लीज मेरे में मत बैठाओ मैं इमिग्रेशन पे खड़ा हूँ कुछ कुछ स्टिमुलस है मैं भी कुछ बचना हूँ एंड my private came to me from my news she said how did that number taken she was how brother I did not think that I was 10 days in silence I was sure I'm dying exactly you can I had responsibility no listen you can but it's not you neither did you watch it yeah sure that's second I'm not going to force you but novelty is such an interesting aspect when you
Um, going past sick and non-mixing stuff, that's something that maybe because of my childhood, our summers were with Nanigur and Hattigur, then we get to work with Mama Hill, and it, these were train journeys, and they were cheap please.
very big
Bangalore. Okay. So Delhi to Bangalore was my father was in public service. So we got ABC, which is the ground concession, once in 2 years. So once in 2 years we could get in first class or AC seven months. And the year that we didn't get ABC, we would pay. So when we would pay, we could only afford second class, right? Which is really, at
1185.
it was like really hard. It was so enjoyable. Because we didn't know any other Chutti. So you go and thought, and we figured stuff which the geography class never did. We actually experienced it कि मिट्टी का कलर चेंज होता है जो यूपी की मिट्टी है वो मध्य प्रदेश की मिट्टी अलग हो जाएगी जब मध्य प्रदेश से हम महाराष्ट्र खर्च करके आगरा चले जाएंगे कि अलग दिखता है माउंटेन्स अलग होते हैं मध्य प्रदेश में हमको शटर्स डाउन करना पड़ता था बिकॉज इट वाज चंबल
yeah man
right so later when I was reading of the chambal decorate I understood it because the train went through that
And finished Sari.
I have that exact Chambal के ऊपर से वो ट्रेन जा रही है and the father will tell me about
And finished Sari embroidery.
smuggling and other that is
And finished Sari.
so he understood so much जो था इस अंदर कहीं आगे का पेठा है कि I had not been to the Taj. I had not been to Agra, but I knew the Agra right at the station. So you experienced and not so
And finished Sari embroidery.
because as a child I felt like the money to stop and experience these states of the country or these cities or towns and villages that we live in to absorb my logic. So even now, when I'm sitting in a car, it's not as if I don't look out. And I you keep it in my chicken in the car. It's beautiful. Just you do that. I drive in the US, it's something like that. I'm constantly looking around. And GPS helps a lot. Okay. I'm going to wait. But still, I love trying to exercise. Love looking at things. So for me, the journey is more than reaching a place. It's the absorption of the culture, the culture.
this will probably come and fall your internet will be countryside to us during October, September. It's on series 8 shades of systems. It's gorgeous. It's even like some range of it, interesting part of I think maybe mine was the last generation that really was playing having a birthday. And actually mine was wrong. But it was such vivid memories of watching an ops go happen in a river, like pending somewhere, or being in that sort of district, right out of the tea. Madhya Pradesh में लाल हो जाएगी, and जाएगी ऐसे like the Maharashtra and Andhra, and here it's a very prevalent so like
Andhra Pradesh because of the storms. The green of Kerala.
yeah, yeah, no, Chibam,
It's so soothing for the eyes. And if you
अबे इतना बाकी है।
so if you try over the western Ghats, बारिश के पानी में जो लचपत green है ना, it is completely different
embroidery.
from the green that you see just green of the Meghalaya is completely different to the sky.
the Meghalaya था,
For-
also different nature far. And in Meghalaya, there's a project plan in just extending into infinity. I'm sure different state. I agree. It's so underspoken of in terms of tourism. I went for NH7, the K concert, which happened there, and it camped outside in the forests, Kanchanaga. I think one of the most
Formal wear,
is,
but with an edge.
bathing in the river, the concert, that green is such a lush green. It's always raining in that one. Where
But
with the lush trees
and
it's
edge.
that's so nice. So that
Correct.
business of taking a tent and all that. I've never been able to do that. एक बार हुआ था where my husband promised that he go back like he's not just start and go down make another camp. But in Rajasthan in this state where जब पहुंचते तो मेरे को migraine हो गया था because the driving was so horrible every weekend. And then there was this excuse was that kind of excuse thing like that was which is that we had
Formal
each other. गर्मी इतनी ऐसे कुछ ठंडा ही नहीं होता और फिर वो बाहर you had a huge cage with parrots inside that would be such a epic और वो वाईफाई नहीं चल रहा तो पिक कर the phone है and you said we want to experience it in terms of
it's so sad.
let me think it
Like the chaos, they extract on it and say,
So we said एक दिन तो रुकना पड़ेगा already checked in if कर रहा है दिन का please give me a realistic hotel जहाँ पे these things work I don't want pink phone pink ceiling pink cave चाहिए
right. No, as a it's also let's look at teacher. Because I mean not just
formal wear,
with it, it's another person in care.
but with an edge.
nice
That's what people get telling me, and I'm like, how long can I say it's back here?
you're not at the crowd
That's not a recipe.
tension thing
Listen, when a friend when they talk about eating and all, it feels like ancient history. But I was a dating man, I don't remember what you're talking about.
please you're talking to a generation that are dating in here now
I'm talking to dinosaurs. Not many papas are मतलब you know what making yourself in a corner? I'm just kidding.
every generation has so much more freedom I don't envy it
Yeah.
but I appreciate it.
No, I think without
We have different levels of tensions and stresses. You guys have different levels of tensions and stresses.
in a more constrained environment, smaller acts are more like a rose had much more of meaning 20 years ago in the dating cycle than it does today. Because as we lose that sort of, or as you gain freedom, gestures have to become grand. And then gestures become useless.
Eating out, yeah.
It means nothing.
Eating out is really. I'm like when I was in my
For-
20s and
formal-
I go out for a meal with my husband and it was
Formal wear.
he was firstly a little scared. Ordering from the menu was different. I didn't know one cheese from the
But
other.
with
Yeah, right.
It was all different and I needed
Then-
and there was no like
Right.
mozzarella or like I didn't know.
Right.
And there was no
formal wear, but with an edge.
there was a adventure.
Yeah, right.
That lack of adventure, I feel that this generation doesn't have. Everything और रेस्टोरेंट चिप्स करने से पहले ही मेन्यू देख लिया
क्यों आई न्यू वन बेटर स्विट्जरलैंड देखने से पहले स्विट्जरलैंड देखी और स्विट्जरलैंड जाने की मजा नहीं आया तो
But
इसमें
with an edge.
so it's no longer a huge shocker to me when I visit all sense of it has been lost because all of that beauty is closely available for clicks and likes and shares in your phone. So I think it gets only worse in that I still have the same background. You know,
This is a
no, the mountains in Parliament, right? And it we just take
With an
all
edge. It's for the
or the Amazon flats. You haven't really made so it makes it interesting, but how long before they're completely mad on it?
why did we see Bangalore?
Right? Because I've seen almost everything else on the since.
The only thing I knew you would geography definitely. You know, anatomy, Patagonia. What's this thing? Example. Mathematics, printed number, right?
Those are the only ones. That's it.
Why did we need to okay, fine. I understand that. But there is you said that if you know geography and you don't know our culture in history or
Yeah, that's a good question. And I wonder how do you get the history of being that has so many nations who pursue things like history?
now there is a debate about that.
Yeah, right.
And that time there was a when I was CBS, and so when we used to learn a certain history, and when I went south, and I saw my cousins learning so much about Shivaji. हमारे यहाँ पे Shivaji Childhood. It's amazing. It's funny.
Right.
We didn't have anything about Rana. We didn't have Cholas, Pandyas, nothing.
Just a mention, one line mention. Okay, my bad, yeah.
And that also, by the time we came to the 10th standard, it was a choice question. We moved to say, you don't need to study about the Cholas and all, you don't need to learn about that. You don't need to learn about, you need to do the
I am
taxation.
Achula. Now the taxation. Sanitation.
What you were that chop and separation, these were taxation systems. You didn't need to learn that. I only know that because I read the text of my class. उनके TV नहीं होता था हम लोग बैठे उनके text books पढ़ते थे. So I got to know a little bit about that. Which made me a little bit more frustrated. So I was just talking the other day that when people talk to me, so Nari Pendreka very she's written a book. And in that she was talking about bucket list weeks of touching. I said, when you were growing up, he read what was available.
Yeah, right.
तो पढ़ा करा करने वो करते थे या फिर लाइब्रेरी जाके वो खरीद के नहीं लेके आते this was unheard of when we were growing up. The bucket list started coming when my children were in school and they were given a reading list. And I used to tell my children, we go to the British Council Library and we will have a reading list and we read these books as communications. I don't care if Mario Shaders, there are Mario. Mario, Mario. But you will do it in English. I wish to God that children read what they like and not necessarily what you want to read.
No, I think that has to be an attitude of irreverence with reading, which is lost because of this instruction even from them.
ones who know that elegance isn't loud but lingers.
As a principle of thought,
The
that's
For the ones who know that elegance isn't loud but lingers.
like
It's for the ones who know that elegance isn't loud but lingers.
read a film, try to imagine what it said in the first place. Read the book as a friend, not as your teacher.
You know the news now.
Ah.
News is coming to you via the device. So it's sending you what you want to read.
Right.
Don't do that. That's what I
It's for the ones who
subscribe to sites which irritate you, which make you think.
So you were saying such Japanese country, and then no attention to it.
You don't like New York Times, you don't like Washington Post, you don't like the Hindu, you don't like the Indian
It's for-
Express, whatever, if you are a certain vector mind. Read it.
When before you know the word Twitter and needed a different answer, I used to say I had a view, I got very confused. I spent 6 months arguing about it in order to get to campus. I gained a lot of time.
It's for the
So then I would follow everybody who went the opposite. And I would let them reflect my mind for 3 months and see if my mind changed or not. And that, I think, made me a way better communicator than anything else ever thought. Because I could articulate your position and my position better than you could articulate your position and my position. And I think that's such a super
It's also friends, right?
Yeah.
And in journalism, you don't have time to have a friends. We generally interact. We spend so much time at work. It's like that doesn't really goes also. It made circles never again. Right? So you tend to then slip.
It's for the ones who know that elegance isn't loud but lingers.
So then something happens to
Elegance isn't loud but lingers.
you realize that you're getting into
It's for the ones who
the chamber, you
know that elegance isn't loud.
you walk up, you eat the same food, mix with the same people, mingle, and then somewhere the majority comes in when you I was neutral. When you do that, that word feels very insecure. That is
No, that
totally is really powerful. To experiment with people with other thoughts. We might meet her or we. So they will attach you to the force,
Will shame you.
which shape you, they do all that to you. So, you know, this, I think, gives you that experimenting, gives you that maturity, which you should have, even if you're not a journalist. No matter who you are. Yeah, no matter who you are. Because you're influencing people, so you should be open to ideas from all sides.
Right. How do you think you know?
elegance
Oh, you're not even watching this. That's not test of how well the conversation.
There's no I never
No, I generally go to our thing because most people I can go on for free. When people I think they can go on for 10, it's just talking.
I just think initially I'm very worried because I don't talk about myself, but I ended up talking about myself.
No, that was a question.
Taking that now.
I'm like, now she said she won't talk about herself. The first question I asked was about yourself, and you answered.
You know, I don't know what तुम्हारा successful तुम्हारी life journey बताओ. I went to
I get it. That's why I asked you for the dishes because people who are like for me, people will tell me often, how far the difference with it? And I'm like, no, my dreams are so that you're looking very small right now. And I'm a very overly ambitious guy. So I try to look. What did I say? I'm pumping peanuts right now. So that's what I'm saying.
now to meet with ambitious people. Just feel that we as a developing country, I want our youngsters, our youth to have more and more bigger and bigger ambitions. That's the only way that we're going to be taking out, like we're doing more in life. That's amazing, especially people who come from small towns. I think when I meet and I listen to their stories, I just think, wow, amazing. Yeah,
that elegance isn't
wow. You've gone through
no, that elegance isn't loud.
So many invisible barriers that I'm not capable of talking about to others. Right? Like there are unheard stories that have been now ये बच्चों को पता लगेगा artist. जब एक दिन मम्मी नाराज नहीं ना किसी मम्मी को पता है मैं कहाँ से आती थी and then she would tell you this three things. Yeah.
Yeah, even when I was person that we were talking
Ah.
fever, start with my mind. Here was this. I mean, like, we're talking about what is I can't seem to that thing, but I'm just triggered a memory that my Nana's wife used to live. My Nana's sister used to live in my Nana's house. She was a child widow, and it was sad that my Nana was so educated. Why did she live as a widow all her life? When did she get her married? And then suddenly things like people idolize the skills, people products of their times with people do what they have to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Today's day and age, if there's somebody who's being widowed in your family, you encourage her to do that.
Very nice.
You still like not just to manage it, become economically self-sufficient. And it's like this service for you to do it, which is but my aunt is no longer alive. I can't ask her this. So it just triggered me that the youth today will not accept this. It's always a question. I never thought of asking my nanny. But when is she sitting on this nowhere near us to that activity? Why can't she also sit with us in the beach? Where she sitting for let's say?
That elegance isn't loud.
Never offered to my mother
Loud.
my nanny to make him a little bit. He killed me myself. And she never said that she wants to sit by me.
Because it's I mean I think it's a product of time back then. And I feel
That elegance isn't loud.
it's so different that time was the average mortality, the age of life
But
expectancy was 35 in that generation. People on average died at 25. Now it's 75. And what that means is for people have just it's very great to get remarried again is seen as a lesser point because they didn't have that long. I'm saying I'm making probably making a comical point. What I'm trying to say is it was very deep. And to judge yesterday by today's reality and then say somebody is good or bad, moral or amoral, I don't think it's right.
It's not, I'm not saying it is ignoble, but I'm saying it's a product of our times. But we need to really question these cultural taboos and break the taboos much easier.
Yeah.
Great. My generation and the generation before me. And you know, I'm not saying I'm judging my grandfather, but I just wonder why nobody questioned it. But
it's for the
question me. They will immediately question me if I use a password. Right? Then we all grew up saying, "Arey, kani hai, ye." You know, I was there all the time to my God. Because my cousins are all fairer, and I was always on the sports team, and I was always cartoon. So it didn't matter, but I was also so you grew up thinking that image about yourself, and then you sat for makeup, and the makeup artist would also need to cartoon shades to look.
it's for the ones who know that
Because of that attitude, look at our anchors today, they're all Gora. Can you see a single anchor, woman anchor, who is not there?
You touching on once somebody once I did it, I could clearly see how fascinated we were with each other because I saw a clear resemblance and I could realize the uniqueness of the survey and you realize the beautifulness of it is and that you never seen it like that because all these advertisements where the women's face being forever color nutrition is a kid. I don't blame the catering to blame them in the certain movement strange, but this vaccination is completely done. This fast that you were talking about for ordering and sort of reading and buying cheeses and so on. Living in a very cultural stratified state
it's for
where I personally insecurity that I'm not high class in the food. When you look high class person is buying a cigarette, you buy it. It might be, but I've internalized my classness in that moment. My ability to speak English is the reflection of my class. And we don't talk about it as loudly, but it's a very
it's for
and you know, even accents. I realized that the Indian friend in my class does not care if his accent is very important. And why must I care if my accent is not American enough? No, that's very cool. Now, please give me the number.
it's for the
Right? Like,
ones who
I
it's for
with your name.
Yeah.
You
for the
right?
Yeah.
I'm sure lots of people call you Bakar.
But Pagar is a more Faridabad pronunciation from again.
it's
In West, it's Clark
for
or Pithar. Over the two. Yeah. It's in continents. Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Samantha.
Sunita. Ismita.
it's for the ones who
Yeah. That
ones who
because the Samantha. State somebody read out somebody's name or common name state and they said this thing is okay. And he told this thing, nobody showed who is like this to me, please come up on stage. You have to believe this about it's ridiculous. You know what? You were an ridiculous.
it's for the ones who know that elegant ones who know
Please, you have the name which can pronounce all over the world. It's easy that everybody.
It's pronounced
It's easy, right?
there was a Mr. name that Vijay gave me because my wife is Mexican. You know, he's weird like that. And I don't pronounce that myself much as anybody else. It's just that what you know about
Easy name which can be pronounced is we are going stable, but
Yeah.
whatever Tani क्या सत्यानाश
ones who know
these complicated names. It's not good. And of course, even in politics, difficult names also right. Don't yeah, उसको कुछ कर देते हैं या उसको कुछ कर देते हैं, but they can't pronounce it, so we cannot.
So ions and dryas have a very future. But thank you so much for doing this. This has been amazing.
Right, put myself thoroughly. Thank you.
I have a message for the friends in the West. India and Pakistan are not the same. Don't make that mistake because it is inconvenient for you to think about this problem. India is a not
Not the ones who know.
Pakistan.
Not the ones who know that intelligence isn't loud but lingers.
Another three to one, what is that? No, one, yes.
The night doesn't start until he walks in.
Your mind doesn't start.
The night doesn't. The night.
Star. Volcanoes. Volcanoes. There's not everything to this school. That mind doesn't steam.
The night the night does the night the night doesn't the night doesn't the night doesn't start. The night doesn't start. The night doesn't start until you until you walk. Start until doesn't start until he walks in. The gentleman's edit. Your next obsession. The gentleman's edit. The gentleman's edit. Your next obsession is here. Your next obsession. Your next
Oh,
your next obsession is here. Gentleman's edit. Gentleman's the gentleman's edit. Your edit. Your next Next obsession. Your next obsession. Next obsession. Is here.
तो ये है कहावत जो कि हम लाइव शो में जोक्स करते करते बीच में करते रहते हैं। भैया मुझे करते हुए बहुत मजा आया तो मैं डाल रहा हूँ इस पर जोक्स हमने लाइव ऑडियंस को सुना दिए हैं वो यूट्यूब पे डाल लेंगे और मुझे इंटरेक्शन करते मजा आया तो मैं उसमें से कुछ पार्ट डाल रहा हूँ तो अच्छा लगेगा एंजॉय कीजिए एंड प्लीज मैं बताता हूँ आपको जो लाइव पहली बार देख रहे हो इससे मेरी दुकान में आपकी दुकान आपने बहुत सारा नहीं छोटी छोटी लिस्ट करता हूँ दूसरी बात I'm blessed with your dance better for us to get a cover. 50 shades of lipstick और क्या ही होगा आपको मैं बिना आराम से कर दो पता ना सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट चैनल में है वही हो रहा है भाई फिर कुछ करना तय दिया ठीक है शुरू आपका तो नहीं मजा आया चलो आप बातें करनी है तो यहाँ पर टेस्ट में मिल गया
Is here.
अच्छा नमस्ते क्या हो
Is here.
गया लाइक भाई Conventions, क्या बात करते हैं तो बना कुछ हुआ
You don't need to shout to be.
stop ये छोटी दो चाहिए please please fellow customers अरे बच्चों तुम चीजों स्टाफ क्या तो नहीं मेरे को भी मैं ये सब चीज से लाइक हाँ alright 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 yes जो आपने पीछे पिलर का बड़ी तो यूज किया ना हाथ नहीं आता मैंने हायर इस हाँ बोले आप बोले या या हालेलुया चलो ऐसे मुझे क्या देखा है बेटी का हमारे थोड़ा देख लो इतना बुरा मैच मैच कॉमेडी का कोई मैच का तो सबसे हाईएस्ट कैलिबर का कितना वो कितना इंच हम शायद 10-20 साल से पहले का बोले कोई शायद 20 साल से पहले आप देखे ना साथ में था जैसे तो गए अच्छा तो अलग अलग 10 अलग अलग एक्सपीरियंस आ रहे हो आप ये बात सुने आऊंगा बैंगलोर थैंक यू सो मच सर आपका
क्या बोला
पर आप चल सामने बैठा हुआ है आप जो आप सुनते 10 मिनट में आपको बताने वाला हूँ आपके क्या सिस्टर क्या नाम है आपका? आप मेरी नवी लेके हाँ मेरी कजन मैं नवी लियो हम लोग शेयर तो पर आई एम टेलिंग यू दिस द बेस्ट इज ऑफ लाइफ आप करो ये बेस्ट हाँ यही बेस्ट था मैं कह रहा हूँ आपने पति का बेस्ट ऑप्शन इस्तेमाल करें अभी आपका पति आपकी बात सुनेगा किसका एक्टिंग अगर